Usually when you look at like a job application or maybe a university admissions page or even one of those skilled immigration forms, you expect the requirements to be written in, well, clear language.
Right, like actual descriptive words.
Exactly. Something like, must be a fluent speaker or need strong conversational skills. But increasingly, you look at these official documents and you just see these weird cryptic codes staring back at you, like B2, C1, A2.
Yeah, it looks less like a language requirement and more like, I don't know, a grid coordinate in a game of Battleship.
That is exactly what it feels like. You're sitting there wondering if you just sunk someone's submarine, when really you're just trying to figure out if you're legally allowed to study in London or move your family to Canada. Our mission today is entirely for you, the listener. We are going to decode these mysterious letter number combinations. We're unpacking this universally recognized framework of language proficiency. And we're going to explore exactly what happens in your brain and literally in your mouth as you progress from a complete beginner to absolute mastery.
It is an incredible journey to trace, really. We're looking at the precise cognitive evolution of the brain, how it adapts, how it um, processes new information, and the specific linguistic growth mechanisms that occur at each distinct stage of acquiring a new language.
Yeah, and just a quick note on our background material for you today. We are pulling insights from a massive stack of global language framework documents, academic analyses, and, official proficiency testing guides.
By heavy reading.
Right, the heavy stuff. So, okay, let's unpack this. Where exactly is the starting line of this whole linguistic journey?
Chapter A1. Well, the starting line is officially termed the breakthrough stage, or level A1. Before anyone can even think about debating philosophy or like writing poetry in a new language, they have to learn how to simply survive in it.
Right, survival mode.
Exactly. This
Mhm.
is the absolute beginner stage where you are basically a newborn in a new culture.
So if I only have a tiny handful of words, I imagine my entire world shrinks down to just what is, like, right in front of me, right? Food, basic directions, shelter. What does that survival toolkit actually look like in practice?
It is incredibly restricted, honestly, and it relies heavily on the empathy of the person you're talking to.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, at A1, communication is entirely dependent on the other person speaking slowly, articulating clearly, and honestly, just being very willing to help you piece together what you're desperately trying to say. It takes about 100 hours of guided learning just to reach this breakthrough stage.
100 hours just to start surviving. Wow. What kind of vocabulary do you actually own after putting in that kind of time?
A very small, highly utilitarian one. I mean, the lexicon at this level is tiny. We're talking about roughly 120 phrases, or up to maybe 700 individual words total.
That's nothing.
It really isn't. And these words are focused entirely on concrete, immediate needs. Numbers, prices, telling the time, pointing at things.
And the sentence framing has to be just as stripped down, right? You're basically relying entirely on the simple present tense, the verb to be, and basic subject pronouns I, you, he, she.
Yeah, that's the absolute limit of the architecture at this point. If we look at the exact sentence structures required at this stage from the sources, an A1 speaker sounds like this. Hello, my name is Maria. I'm from Spain. I am 25 years old.
Very textbook.
Right. Or if they're in a cafe trying to get a basic need met, I would like one coffee, please.
It's like building with a starter set of Lego blocks. You only have a few square, bulky bricks, so you can only build very boxy, simple structures. And let me push back on this for a second, because I think a lot of people wonder about this stage.
Sure.
If you are just saying, I am Maria, or one coffee, please, is this even considered speaking a language? Or are you essentially just reciting a phrasebook from memory?
No, it is absolutely speaking. And to understand why, you have to look at what is happening cognitively under the hood.
Okay.
A1 isn't just parroting sounds. It is the active decoding of phonology. When you first hear a foreign language, your brain perceives it as a continuous, impenetrable wall of noise.
Right, totally. Just a blur of syllables.
Exactly. At A1, your brain is doing the exhausting, heavy lifting of finding the boundaries between words in real time. You are processing survival basics while simultaneously trying to map unfamiliar sounds to meaning. It is a massive, crucial cognitive first step.
Chapter A2. The problem with survival mode, though, is that it's incredibly isolating because you only have those basic square Lego blocks we talked about. You are trapped in the immediate present. You can't talk about what happened yesterday, and you can't talk about tomorrow.
Right, you're stuck in the now.
Yeah, and human nature dictates that you naturally want to start connecting those blocks to build something a little bigger.
And that desire bridges us perfectly into level A2, which is known as the way stage, or the elementary level. Reaching this stage requires about 180 to 200 cumulative hours of study.
So another big time jump.
Definitely. But here, those isolated survival phrases finally start to become actual connected thoughts. Learners at this stage can handle simple routine tasks and everyday small talk.
And to do that, your vocabulary gets a significant bump, right?
It does, yeah. The word count jumps to about 1,000-word families. But the real magic of A2 happens at the grammar and the sentence framing. This is where basic connectors are introduced.
Words like and, but, and because.
Exactly. And crucially, as you mentioned, learners start exploring past and future tenses.
This is where you finally escape the present moment. You can demonstrate this leap in cognitive complexity just by looking at the standard A2 examples from the documents. Like, an A2 speaker can finally share their background by saying, "Before I came here, I lived in Italy."
Right, acknowledging the past.
Or looking forward, they can say, "In the next 5 years, I'm going to start my own company." You're suddenly able to string your identity across time.
What's fascinating here is that while the A2 user can now share their personal history and their ambitions, the underlying dynamic of the conversation hasn't fully shifted yet.
What do you mean?
Well, if you've ever felt that exhausting, heavy brain fog after speaking a foreign language on vacation for a few hours, you were experiencing the A2 cognitive load. You are participating in the dance, but you still rely heavily on a native speaker to carry the heavy lifting of the interaction.
Ah, so they're doing the work for you.
They are absolutely still leading the conversation, slowing down, and, anticipating your gaps.
Chapter B1. But you can't rely on a patient native speaker forever. At some point, the training wheels have to come off. You want to move from just surviving a conversation with the linguistic babysitter to actually participating independently.
And that transition is exactly what defines level B1. This is categorized as the threshold stage. It takes about 350 to 400 hours of study. And linguistically, it is widely considered the massive turning point of language learning.
The big leap.
Yeah, this is where the learner officially graduates from a basic user to an independent user.
Independent. That sounds like real freedom. What does the toolkit actually look like when you cross that threshold?
The vocabulary expands significantly to between 2,000 and 3,000 word families. But the sentence framing is where you see a profound level of sophistication. We start seeing the use of the present perfect continuous, the past perfect, and indirect questions.
Which changes everything about how people perceive you, I'd imagine. Instead of just bluntly pointing and asking, "Where is the train?" a B1 user has the tools to frame it as, "Can you tell me where the train is?"
Yes, exactly.
It's softer, it's more polite, and it adheres to social norms.
Completely. And the cognitive demonstration of this level is incredible. B1 is the exact moment learners stop translating every single phrase from their mother tongue in their head and they start actually thinking in English.
Wow.
Yeah, the brain builds a parallel neural pathway. Because they can think directly in the language, they can now cope with unpredictable real-world problems.
Like when you're traveling and your hotel room is double booked, or someone strikes up a totally unprepared conversation with you on the bus. You don't have a memorized phrasebook entry for a double booked hotel room.
Right. You have to independently construct the argument on the spot, drawing from your 3,000 words to negotiate a solution.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
If I can travel through a country, chat with a stranger on a bus, and successfully argue with a receptionist about my hotel room in English, aren't I basically fluent at that point? Why is B1 only called the threshold?
That is a great question. But it's because of the underlying cognitive limitations that are still very present. A B1 speaker is highly capable, sure, but only within familiar everyday topics.
Ah, I see.
When they speak, their sentences still feel noticeably slow to a native listener as their brain consciously constructs the grammar. More importantly, they lack the specific vocabulary needed to discuss abstract concepts or highly technical issues. They can solve the hotel problem, but they absolutely cannot debate the broader economic impacts of the hospitality industry.
Chapter B2. Ah, okay. Solving a logistical problem isn't the same as expressing complex thoughts. So if B1 is the stage where you stop translating in your head, the next stage, B2, feels like the stage where you finally start sounding like yourself again.
That is a perfect way to describe the vantage stage. Level B2 is widely considered the threshold of true basic fluency.
Basic fluency, right.
Reaching it requires a cumulative 500 to 600 hours of study. And because this is the stage where you regain your true voice and personality, it is the standard minimum requirement for most international university admissions and global corporate workplaces.
The vocabulary at B2 hits around 4,000 word families. But the framing, this is the stage I find fascinating because you are no longer just a functional tourist. You can actually be persuasive or diplomatic or analytical. You unlock the ability to manipulate time and hypotheticals.
Let's break down exactly how that works because it's so important. The framing at this level isn't just about sharing facts anymore. It's about the clear explanation of viewpoints.
Yeah.
With advanced grammatical tools, you can debate advantages and disadvantages by linking past hypotheticals to present realities. You can say things like, if the company had invested earlier, we wouldn't be facing this deficit today.
You also unlock the advanced passive voice, which I love. You can say, mistakes were made during the reporting process. You learn how to shift focus and strategically remove blame, which, let's be honest, is an absolute necessity in a professional corporate environment.
Oh, absolutely. It's a vital survival tool in the workplace. At B2, you can understand complex texts and you can interact with native speakers fluently enough that neither side has to artificially slow down. There's no more strain on the conversation.
So the training wheels are completely off, and the bicycle is moving at full speed in traffic.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, B2 is the stage where you can sit in a high-level university lecture or a high-stakes workplace meeting and function perfectly. You might occasionally hit a gap in your vocabulary, but you have the fluency and the confidence to immediately talk around that gap like describing the word you mean without breaking your stride or halting the meeting.
Chapter C1. So you're fluent. You can handle the meeting. But what happens when the meeting is over and you need to decode a highly sarcastic joke at the water cooler? Or what if your job isn't just attending the meeting, but actually reading between the lines of a polite but incredibly passive-aggressive email from a rival department?
That's a whole different ballgame.
Right. Basic fluency just isn't enough for that.
And that is exactly when you need level C1. This is the effective operational proficiency stage, or the advanced level. It demands an intense 700 to 800 hours of study. At C1, the language completely shifts in its utility. It is no longer a barrier you are actively overcoming. It becomes a sharp precision tool for executive leadership in complex academia.
The sheer volume of words required to do that is huge. 5,000 to 6,000 word families, which includes a heavy load of academic, professional, and culturally specific terminology. But how does the actual structure of the sentences change from B2?
It becomes incredibly sophisticated and layered. C1 framing requires mastery of things like inversion for dramatic emphasis, complex conditionals, and nominalization.
Nominalization, that's turning verbs into nouns, right?
Exactly, to sound more objective. Instead of saying, we analyze the data, a C1 speaker will say, the analysis of the data revealed. It sounds instantly more authoritative. But the most crucial addition here is hedging language.
Hedging language, like saying it seems that or it appears that, instead of just bluntly stating something as an absolute fact.
Exactly. Because in an executive or academic environment, making absolute statements can get you sued or at least severely critiqued. At C1, framing is all about flexibility and recognizing implicit meaning. You aren't just saying words to get a raw point across anymore. You are consciously adapting your tone to your specific audience.
Right, you're reading the room.
You are using complex cohesive devices to stitch 10-minute-long arguments together seamlessly. And you're expressing these complex ideas spontaneously without ever having to pause and visibly search for an expression.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. C1 isn't just about sounding smart in a boardroom. It grants you full, unrestricted autonomy in an English-speaking country. Because you can finally understand subtle jokes, idioms, and deep cultural nuances, you aren't just communicating anymore, you are fully participating in the culture at a high level.
Chapter C2. That's the perfect transition, really.
Because if C1 gives you complete cultural autonomy and executive presence, what is left? Why is there another mountain to climb? Which brings us to the final boss of language learning.
Level C2, the mastery stage, where speakers achieve a level of finesse that mirrors and sometimes even exceeds native proficiency. And the time commitment to reach this peak is staggering. It takes a massive 1,000 to 1,200 hours of guided intensive learning.
The vocabulary arsenal at C2 is just astounding. We are talking 7,000 to 9,000 or even upward of 10,000 word families. But as you climb this high, it's not just about volume anymore, is it? It's about the texture of the words.
The texture, yes.
You are absorbing highly specific, culturally embedded terms, obscure idioms, and the exact vocabulary required for highly sophisticated, dry humor.
And the sentence framing at C2 is all about absolute, unwavering precision. It involves incredibly complex discourse markers and the ability to effortlessly code switch between different social registers.
Code switching is so hard to master.
It is. A C2 speaker can seamlessly transition from presenting a formal academic paper to joking in street slang at a pub without missing a single beat or sounding unnatural in either environment.
To really understand how precise this gets, we have to look at the ultimate C2 example provided in the documentation. A C2 speaker can effortlessly generate and immediately comprehend a sentence framed exactly like this. The epistemological implications of this research methodology warrant careful consideration, particularly regarding the inherent biases that may inadvertently skew our interpretations of the phenomenological data.
It's a lot.
Okay, wow, that is a massive mouthful. And honestly, it makes me want to push back a little because that just sounds like an academic robot. Is C2 just about swallowing a thesaurus? Is it just knowing every single obscure multisyllabic word in the dictionary so you can sound intellectually superior?
It's a very common misconception, but no.
Yeah.
The reality is that even highly educated native speakers don't know every word in the dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
C2 is not about vocabulary hoarding. It is entirely about finesse.
Finesse.
Yeah. If C1 is being able to read the sheet music flawlessly, C2 is being able to play jazz. It is the ability to take incredibly complex arguments from multiple differing sources, summarize them coherently on the fly, and express the absolute finer shades of meaning flawlessly. It's about having such total command of the instrument that you are never misunderstood, no matter how complex or sensitive the topic is.
So we've climbed all the way from the A1 survival phrasebook, desperately trying to separate the wall of noise just to get a cup of coffee, all the way to the C2 finesse of summarizing phenomenological data. So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? Why do these distinct invisible levels actually matter in the real world?
They matter because these levels are the primary gatekeepers of global opportunity today. They aren't just abstract linguistic concepts debated in university halls. These exact levels dictate your points for migration like Canada's Express Entry system, which assigns strict point values to your B2 or C1 test results.
Right, it's literally points on an application.
Exactly. They determine work visas in the UK, they dictate university placements around the world, and they unlock career breakthroughs. Understanding this specific framework helps you set realistic, measurable study goals, rather than just feeling paralyzed by the vague, undefined desire to get fluent.
It gives you a tangible roadmap. And now that we've reached the very end of that map, it is time for the reveal. What is the name of this framework that dictates so much of the global language landscape? This entire deep dive was based on the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, universally known as the CEFR.
The famous CEFR.
Yep.
Oh.
It's a standard that was launched by the Council of Europe back in 2001 to standardize language requirements across borders for work and study. We also drew heavily today on proficiency and testing guides from EFSET, Preply, and Cambridge English, who all utilize this exact CEFR scale.
This raises an important question, though, when we look back at the entire cognitive spectrum we've discussed today.
It really does. And we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you think about your own language journeys. If an A1 learner uses a language purely as a survival tool, just trying to stay afloat, get a cup of coffee, and figure out where the train is, and a C2 speaker uses that exact same language to effortlessly debate the nuances of philosophy and culture, at what exact invisible line on that CEFR scale does the language stop being a foreign tool you use and start becoming a fundamental part of your identity?
It's a profound shift to consider.
It truly is. From the muddy, broken waters of trying to piece together your first words to seeing the world through an entirely new, crystal clear lens, keep building your Lego blocks.